Earlier today, in what appeared to be a live stream, former GOP presidential candidate Ron Paul suffered what some people were saying was a stroke. I don't know exactly what it was. We'll read the story, but I can tell you that Ron Paul is okay. He posted this message. I am doing fine. Thank you for your concern. Senator Rand Paul, his son. Thank God Dad is doing well. Thank you for all your prayers today. I have a lot of really good things to say about Rand Paul and Ron Paul, and I'm going to hold off on that just to make sure you know exactly what happened. But I am glad to hear that Ron is doing well. The video that I saw go viral was particularly scary. I'm a fan of Ron, and I'm a big fan of Rand. And so I definitely want to talk about what Ron Paul means to me and why I'm glad to see he's doing well and how much I appreciate and respect him and Senator Rand Paul. But let's read the news first, and then we'll talk about it. The Daily Mail reports Ron Paul, the Republican ex-congressman who thrice ran for the White House, suffered some kind of medical emergency in the midst of a live-streamed event. Disturbing video of the event shows Paul talking about the free market, and then his speech suddenly turns to gibberish as another participant on the video asks if he's okay. A number of people sharing the video suspected Paul had a stroke. The former presidential candidate's Twitter account sent out a message from Ron Paul Friday afternoon. I am doing fine. Thank you all for your concern, with an image of Paul dressed in a hospital gown, smiling and giving a thumbs up. Fox News reported that Paul was hospitalized for precautionary reasons. So we can see we have these clips here. This was the video clip right here where Dr. Paul started to slur his speech and then just started muttering garbled gibberish. I mean, no disrespect. There was a medical issue, and I'm glad to see he's okay. Paul is the father of Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, whose office didn't have an update on the former Texas governor right away, but Rand did say, he's grateful. While Paul retired from Congress in 2013, the 85-year-old has remained active in politics, continuing to film episodes of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. It was during filming of an episode Friday the incident occurred. Paul first ran for the White House in 1988, but his 2008 campaign was notable for the lawmakers' ability to harness the power of the web. The Ron Paul love revolution. You remember that? The stickers are still up in my old neighborhood back in Philly, which is still technically my neighborhood, I guess, because I'm not completely moved or anything. But there, I see the stickers and it says like Ron Paul 2008 and love in the middle. And that takes me back. But let's read a little bit more and then we'll talk about Ron Paul. His supporters created viral moments in support of the candidate who represented the more libertarian side of the Republican Party. In one such instance, they raised money for a Ron Paul blimp that flew over several cities in the run-up to the 2008 primaries, which Senator John McCain ultimately won. Paul again ran for president in 2012, losing the nomination to the more mainstream Mitt Romney. During that cycle, Paul memorably put out a cookbook of family recipes. Very nice. Paul's success in politics helped launch the Senate career of his son Rand, who was the underdog in a GOP Senate primary in 2010, but was aided financially by money raised online by many of the same grassroots supporters who wanted to see the elder Paul in the White House. Rand Paul ran unsuccessfully for the White House in 2016, bowing out in early February after underperforming in the Iowa caucuses. Ron Paul was first elected to represent Texas in 1976 in a special election. He served in Congress during 3 spans of time throughout his political career. Texas Senator Ted Cruz tweeted about the event Friday afternoon. Heidi and I are lifting up in prayer Ron Paul and Rand Paul and their family. For many decades, he has been an extraordinary warrior for liberty. May God's healing hand be upon Dr. Paul, and may God's peace and grace be upon the entire family, Cruz wrote. A lot of people right now are tweeting that prayer works, and I can respect that. I myself am not particularly religious, but part of me says I'll take whatever I can get for the health and well-being of the Paul family. I remember that era of the 2008 Ron Paul love revolution, the primary and all that stuff. And that was a big moment for me in my life. And I listened to a lot of what Ron Paul had to say. And I disagreed with a lot of it. And I looked into a lot of it. And I disagreed with Ron Paul a lot. And I would challenge my friends when they would say things like, this, that, and this, the Federal Reserve. And I'd be like, come on. But I'll tell you what else. I agreed with a lot of the things he said on liberty and even on life at conception, things like these things. I didn't, I don't consider myself to be particularly religious, but it felt like Ron Paul was the first time I experienced what I guess I could say is an honest politician. before, discovering Ron Paul and seeing this stuff, to me, it was just a field of liars lying for power. And that's what politics was. And I didn't care for it. And when the memes started popping up, the early day memes, not like the best memes in the world, and the videos, and I started watching what Ron Paul had to say, I became a fan, even though I disagreed. And even though I would love to have these conversations with a lot of my friends who just immediately dived right in and started saying all of this stuff, they're all about Ron Paul. And I'm like, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. Listen, don't play that tribalist game, right? People saw this viral thing happening and wanted to be a part of it. So a lot of people just claimed that they were on board with Ron Paul and everything he was saying without actually knowing what a lot of it meant. And so for me, there were just things I generally disagreed with. Now, listen, I'm speaking very, very generally just because it's been over a decade since I've had these conversations. I can tell you that pro-life versus pro-choice was a big thing that I was, thinking about at the time. And I had a great conversation with Seamus Coughlin of Freedom Tunes last night about, pro-life versus pro-choice. And these conversations wouldn't be possible, in my understanding of a lot of these issues, without Ron Paul, because I didn't necessarily believe in the system. Now, I'll tell you what. I voted for Obama in 2008. I didn't vote for Ron Paul. But, for me, I think seeing what he had to say and speaking with his supporters and friends of mine who are all about Ron Paul, that to me was a path towards, I guess, being accepting of people you didn't necessarily agree with. Now, to be fair, like I did really like Ron Paul for his honesty and his libertarianism, freedom, individualism. And I think it led to a lot of enlightening conversations. And again, I can't go back 10 years and try and remember exactly what these conversations were, but it was very much so about market economics versus more welfare stuff. And I've told you guys, I was far lefty, like anarcho-punk, when I was a teenager skating. And it was around this time I started seeing different ideas and different messages. So, again, I'm eternally grateful that Dr. Paul is doing well. And now, as for Mr. Rand Paul, I can praise your father and I can respect him for the work that he's done throughout his life. And I think it's wonderful. And now I have some words for you. I think you're great as well. I think Rand Paul's fantastic. And I'm also grateful for Ron Paul for bringing Rand Paul to the table. The Paul family, they're principled. And so even if I disagree, I tremendously respect their integrity. As for Rand, there are very few politicians I actually like. And Rand Paul has done a lot of really, really bold things, standing up to both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, filibustering for long periods of time, and standing up for the rights of Americans, challenging unwarranted surveillance. And more recently, Rand Paul putting forward the Justice for Brianna Taylor bill, which would ban no-knock warrants. Even though we now know, and many of us were duped, not everybody, but it was wrong when people were saying that the Brianna Taylor case was about no-knock warrants because they did knock. I was posting on, somebody posted on Facebook all day. I'm seeing this. I'm just copy and pasting. I'm not even saying the cops are right or wrong. I was just saying it wasn't a no-knock warrant. Brianna Taylor and her boyfriend were in the hallway. At least that's what Brianna Taylor's boyfriend said. And when the cops busted in, he shot the cop in the leg and the cops fired back. And they're blocking me. They're like, I don't want to hear it. But Rand Paul, despite that, still wanted to bring about justice for Brianna Taylor. Why? Because libertarians get it too. You can be libertarian, not be an SJW, and still be like, let's get some changes to the system. And that's my respect to the Paul family, especially Ron and now Rand. When it comes to addressing police reform issues, you can find a middle ground and you can find the appropriate response, which I've said is reform. We know it wasn't a no-knock warrant. Okay, I get it. So in this regard, still, it seems like Rand is trying to say, we don't want police violating your Fourth Amendment rights. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. And for that, I absolutely respect it. It's almost like, the two-party system isn't really a two-party system. I know people say it is because a lot of people will just vote D or R, even if they regret it later. We had this trans-Satanist anarchist run for sheriff and then win on the Republican primary, which I think is hilarious. But someone like Ron and Rand, they're very, very libertarian. They're still a part of the Republican Party, but they're honest and they represent the true the true ideas of liberty and freedom. I'm actually not as big on small government as Ron Paul probably is. But When I saw Bernie Sanders back in 2016, it reminded me of Ron. And being someone who's more on the left, I was like, there are very few people that I actually liked. And I think Ron Paul, in non-policy ways, was like a precursor to Bernie Sanders, a viral internet sensation who was, seen to be a very honest guy. Well, I got to say, I don't think Bernie Sanders is all that honest of a guy now. I think Bernie is just playing the game, and he's basically sold out. So there's very few people that I can still, look to and believe are trying to do their best. And so, look, I wanted to highlight that Ron Paul was okay. I wanted to explain what Ron means to me. So I'm 34. Ron's 85, and it was 12 years ago. I was like, was it 12 years ago? It had to be a little bit before that. I think it'd be way before that. Couldn't have been 2008. I think it was before that when people started sending me these Ron Paul videos on the internet and stuff, because I was younger for sure. And, that's about it. Look, there's a handful of Republicans that I think are doing a really good job, and I disagree with them on a lot of policy issues, but it's about honesty, and it's about fighting for the commons and the working class people and regular Americans, and I think they do that. So grateful to see that he's doing well. Thank you for tuning in on this, little video about Ron Paul, I guess. I got a couple more segments in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.